Good afternoon, Winthrop. We are here again to discuss our favorite topic, the public safety building and the fire station that we're proposing. That'll be on the ballot on November 7th. The Fire Station Building Committee has been hard at work, having meetings, doing some due diligence, working on the website, and also most recently, and what we wanted to update you on is we got some renderings on the website for those who haven't been there recently, and that shows what potentially Phase 2 could look like. One of the questions we were asked is, what about the police station? And certainly while the police station, they need more space, and certainly an older building, that will be part of Phase 2. So those renderings show, what that tie-in could look like and how that corner could be adapted, taking into historical significance of the, the historic district up there, what it could look like and whatnot, and tying in to the fire station with a bridge or some other connection piece. So we were proud to do that. I am joined today with State Rep Jeff Turco. We appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule, and also Council President Jim Letterie. And we're going to kick around some ideas here. Jeff, I wanted to bring up something that came up at one of our meetings, and maybe you can give us the state's perspective on this. Similar to the MSBA, where they gives money a percentage based on demographics and median income and whatnot for school buildings, there was a proposed bill to do that for public safety buildings. I know it's been around for a little while, but could you just give an update on where that bill is and what's going on with that?
Yeah, so every year for the last probably 10 years, a bill has been filed to create the equivalent of an MSBA for public safety, police, fire. And the reality is the bill hasn't gone anywhere. And I don't expect, I've talked to my colleagues, I've spoken to some people in leadership to say, is there the will to make something like this happen? And right now, the focus is buttressing with the increased cost of inflation on school building projects. We've put a lot of resources into expanding the available pool of funds to build schools. And so the resources, the bond resources, are not there to look at police and fire at the present time.
Okay,
so I don't anticipate it happening anytime soon, particularly in this environment.
All right. Now, obviously, you live in town, but you also deal with it at the state level. So, I mean, maybe you could explain to the residents, why now, right? I mean, public safety buildings here in Winthrop certainly were 60 years late, right? And they don't get any cheaper. And, even from the state level, it's always good to keep up with your infrastructure, having a project in the queue every 5-10 years so you don't get behind. And maybe you can elaborate on that and what the state's outlook is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that Winthrop is decades behind upgrading its police and fire buildings. We have two buildings that are 100 plus years old for the fire service. The challenges that our firefighters face. I mean, how many fires have we had in the last few years in Winthrop? It seems like it's a particularly high number compared to the first 15 years that I was in town. You look at the amount of service that we provide to the MWRA, all of the challenges that our fire service have faced, and the fact that they effectively work in squalor. I'm not even sure if state regulators came in or federal regulators came in and looked at the facilities, if they would say that they meet standards to be safely operated today. And so as a resident of the town, more so than as a state rep, I think it's hard to expect firefighters to go to work every day, put their lives on the line, ready to answer the call, whether it's a medical aid call or whether it's because of a fire, and then turn around and say, but you don't have functioning windows and you have to volunteer your time as a member of the fire service to repair the windows, because that's what happened in the beach firehouse. I remember years ago going over, they'd have dinner with some of the guys, and they literally had to redo the entire floor because there was concern about them falling through. And so I think now is the time, there's never a good time to spend money, let's face it, but now is the time, I think, to meet our moral obligation to the people that wear the uniform every day to say, we're going to make a commitment. We've made considerable commitment over the last decades to improve our schools. A lot of that, as Council President Letterie will talk about, is starting to come off the tax roll. And so this is a good time to sort of jump in, use some of that tax savings that we'll see on the debt exclusions to then use that for the fire service to give them an adequate facility, and then let us repurpose or resell the other buildings, depending on what ultimately is decided.
Absolutely. Now, State Rep Turco talked about the financing, but one of the things we talked about is, the total impact of the project will be anywhere between $400 and $500, depending upon the value of your home, over the next 30 years as we finance the project. Jim, did you want to talk about, the debt exclusion and, how that's only a temporary, even though 30 years seems like a long time, it does eventually come off. And then maybe, talk about some of the other projects and where they stand right now.
Absolutely, yes. We've done, the town over the past 20 plus years has done 4 debt exclusions, right? We've built 3 brand new schools.
Yep.
The Gorman Fort Banks, the ATC school, and the middle high school, along with Miller Field, has completely been done over. Those were all debt exclusions. Depending on the project, there was a different amount of time. The Miller Field is only a 15-year debt exclusion. The others were 20 and 25 years. And the middle high school was 30. So when you're looking at those projects, the Fort Banks School we've paid off. It was paid off last year. The Arthur T. Cummings School comes off the tax rolls next year. And Miller Field comes off the tax rolls in fiscal 32. We were very cognizant when we started looking at this project of the finances because, you know, our main concern is to look out for the residents of Winthrop and what they can and can't afford. We can't tell them what they can and can't afford, but we have to take that into consideration, which we think is something that has an appetite. We all know and we all agree that the need for these buildings is, you know, an absolute, basically. It's an absolute. It's the cost of the project. So the way we're rolling this out is we're hoping on November 7th that it's voted in. This project wouldn't fully hit the tax rolls until fiscal 27. In fiscal 25, the ATC comes off the tax rolls, and in fiscal 32, as I said, Miller Field comes off the tax rolls. Those 2 projects coming off account for about 40% of the cost of this project. So if your taxes went up $500, for example, you would see the effect of a $300 increase, basically. And when we're looking at the phasing approach, we're trying to take that same characteristic. We know that the police station is in desperate need of space. We know that there's a need there, and hence that's why we've brought phase 2 in, to let people know what we're thinking and how we can connect those 2 buildings. But we're thinking that it takes a little bit of time for us to get that project going. So by the time that project gets up and running, and then the couple of years it takes to hit the tax rolls, we'll only be a handful of years away from the middle high school coming off the tax rolls. So we're really trying to look out for the finances of the town, which is our responsibility as elected officials. So, you know, I think it's incredibly important. The town has been very supportive of the past overrides over the last almost quarter of a century, and we've done a lot of great things. Not one of them, there's never a project that comes forward that is the perfect project, that you just get 100% of the people that say, this is great, let's just do this, let's not even wait for a vote. It doesn't happen. Every project has concerns. Fort Banks had concerns with traffic. The ATC had concerns with removing a building that had been there for a long time, the Willis School. The middle high school had concerns with combining 2 schools at once. The Miller Field project had concerns with flood zone. So every project has its concerns, and we're well aware of the concerns people have now with this project. And I think there are few, not as many as some other projects, but you just have to understand that we've looked at this for the past 10 months and we've tried to take into every consideration into account. We really feel this is the right plan for now. There's no question of the need. Representative Turco talked about the conditions that these firehouses are in now. We owe it to our firemen, and we owe it to the town too, to have the best possible service they can.
Absolutely. One of the things that was talked about, you know, we had a great Chamber of Commerce meeting this morning over at the meat market, you know, took some input from some local business owners, and one of the questions that came up and probably, you know, needs an answer, at least publicly, is, you know, all right, if the vote's not successful, which we hope it will be, but if it's not successful on November 7th, what are the next steps? Now, certainly you and I have talked about that, but certainly... You know,
yeah, we have. And, you know, again, you always have to be prepared, right? You don't want to have something happen that you just didn't want and say, okay, what do we do now? I think the plan is right now. We have done this in a relatively short period of time because of the type of project it was. And maybe it needs more education. I would expect to see this back on a ballot in the spring. With more education. The cost of these projects just continue to go up. We brought not us physically, but the town brought a proposed firehouse in 1997. The cost of that project was $3.5 million. Right. The town didn't do it at the time, and then over the next 20 years, we really focused on education and getting the school buildings up and ready. Now it's 27, 28 years later, and we're at 35 to 40 million. That cost, we've been told, goes up 8 to 10% a year. So this is in the queue. It's a project that we have vetted out. We have looked at it. We've had engineers look at it, architects look at it. This has gone so much further than any other project. We really feel this is the right thing for the citizens of this town. If we have not done our job in educating the people, again, and I encourage people to look at winthropfirestation.com for more information, as town manager spoke about earlier. It gives you renderings of what the complete project will look like. It talks to you about finance. It has an interactive piece, so you can see the tax consequences for each individual homeowner. But yes, I would fully intend to see this project back on the ballot if it did not pass in November.
All right, very good. Now, as far as financing, you talked about it briefly, Jeff. I mean, you know, God forbid somebody would come in and, you know, say, hey, we can't operate out of these buildings anymore. Now we're talking, you know, renting buildings or satellite buildings, and, you know, I guess the question would be for me, I mean, I don't even believe there's any funding at the state level for even any of those things, so that would be completely on Winthrop, I believe.
100% would be on Winthrop. I mean, anybody that looks at the national and the state economy, we ended the fiscal year June 30th where we used about $500 million of money that would have gone into reserve, had to be used to patch a hole in the budget. The first 3 months of this fiscal year, which began July 1st, we're about $125 million short on revenue projections.
Right.
Federal government ended their fiscal year September 30th, almost $2 trillion in the hole. So the gravy train of money coming from the national and the state government to municipalities that we've seen over the last number of years, particularly with COVID money, that's all drying up.
Right.
And so if we don't approve this project now, and if we don't move forward with it now, and it comes out that now you got to spend $3, $4, $5 million, $10 million to do patchwork, that's 100% going to come from the town going out and bonding money and paying it out of municipal budget, and then dealing with how do you pay for that debt service, potentially through layoffs or whatever the case may be. So, you know, I don't want to create a nightmare scenario for the public, but at the end of the day, these costs are not going down. And if I could, you know, the council president referred to the prior attempts to look at what a fire station would cost. I mean, the city of Revere, which I represent as well, is looking at a new high school project. And that high school project a year ago was $364 million. A year later, because of inflation and increased cost of construction, they came back and said, well, we've revised the numbers for the same exact building in 1 year, went from 364 to $390 plus million, $490 plus million, $130 plus million increase, nearly a third in 1 year, you know, in terms of projections. And so, you know, the reality is that the longer this waits, the more it's going to cost. And at some point, we're going to be compelled to do this, because we can't ask people to put their lives on the line and have them in buildings that are unsafe, where they can't do their job, they can't do their training. And so that's ultimately where the situation we find ourselves in. And I encourage anyone to go to the fire station and ask for a tour. You don't have to do it as part of an official tour with the town, but take a walk to one of the fire stations and ask, can I see the place? You'll be horrified, you know, in the fact that the people that don the uniform every day go to work cheerfully to serve their community is, to me, a testament of the quality of the people we have working for us, that they do that in light of and despite of the conditions that we've given them to work.
Right. Now, on the state level, I know you deal with this and you see this from an economic development standpoint. You know, one of the things we've heard across the board is, you know, well, why not just do it at the middle school site? We already own it. And that site has been tabbed, you know, years ago, is it the best place for economic development, you know, so whether the council president brought forward, and, you know, the council's kicking around the idea of like a sports complex, and, you know, you've got kids in it, I've got kids that play in sports. I mean, you know, the thought that, you know, what, you know, potential revenue and the impact that might have, you know, from the state level, I know they like that, but, you know, talk about that, what you think a sports complex may or may not bring to that area.
I think it's a tremendous idea. I mean, if you know, I go to Sudbury, to the Sudbury Annex for my kid to play AU basketball. I take my daughter up to the barn in New Hampshire, 3 or 4 basketball courts. If you could build something like that here in Winthrop on the middle school site, you get the revenue from people coming here, from the tax revenue for the site now being used for a commercial purpose. You get the people that then leave the site and walk across the street to CVS. The town picks up the 0.75% on the sales tax. They go to one of our restaurants. They get the points. The town gets the 0.75% on the meals tax. It's a huge revenue boost, but it also does what all of us want. It doesn't bring children that overcrowd our schools, which then add to the cost of running our schools. It doesn't bring a lot of permanent traffic that floods our streets. It brings seasonal traffic. It brings traffic during set hours of operation that's sort of spread out. And it really is an opportunity to expand the economic base of the town without drowning us in another 100, 150, or 200 residential units that, over the years, some have talked about trying to put in that site.
And I would certainly compliment not only the council president, but the entire council for this strategic thinking on this, like to not only just take a look at what our needs for the fire station are, but also the long-term planning for economic development and the best use of, that land for the town and, our newly developed French Square and everything else, so.
Absolutely. I think the council deserves great credit, because it'd be easy to say, let's just go and sell it to the highest developer, highest paid developer, and put 150 units in and see dollar signs to think, what does that bring in terms of tax revenue? But certainly then when you go and you talk to your superintendent and your school committee and you say, okay, we've just added 100 kids to the schools, what does that look like? And you say, now we have a problem because we don't have the classroom space. What result? The fact that people have taken a step back and said, let's look at, I know at one point in the past, I came up with the idea of saying maybe we could put a small boutique hotel. We've looked at that. It didn't pan out. Looking at an athletic complex, I think is the critically necessary outside the box thinking that can really benefit the town over the long haul. And I think it'll make people feel happy to finally see an empty, abandoned building, be torn down, and let's get moving on it.
Absolutely. Jim, do you want to add anything on that? Or?
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the sports complex is an incredible idea, and I think it does check all the boxes, because you look and you look at our student population. We had a school committee meeting last night. Our student population is, I believe, 1,932 kids. It's up 52 kids since last October at this time. So, and if you're looking at 50 kids at $16,000 a kid, that's $800,000. And so if you're looking at bringing in 100 units, and again, the units themselves might not have a lot of kids, or they might have a lot of kids, but people love Winthrop, and you have an aging population that want to stay in this town, but they might not want to have the upkeep on their home, but they look at a different option that they might be able to sell their home and move there. And that's going to happen anyway, but to have it all happen at once is too much for our schools to bear. And you're getting to the possibility where, again, I look at net revenue. I don't just look at, tax revenue, and we're going to get in $300,000 in tax revenue. That's not the bottom line. The bottom line is what expenses are incurred because of the income from that tax revenue. Is it more fire, more police, more schools? And that's where you have to look at. And nowadays, these developers, and the representative discussed it about apartments, it all seems to be apartment driven. It's not condominium driven. And there's a huge difference between apartment tax income and condominium tax income. So to put in 100 units there does not bring you the tax revenue you might think. It might be $100,000 to $200,000, and the cost associated with that would probably far exceed that.
Absolutely.
Along with the traffic and congestion, as we see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've certainly thrown out a lot of information there. I will say, one of the benefits, we're working hard to also, we want to say, the other concern is the tenants that are in the Wadsworth building, where are they going to go? We've been working hard to keep the businesses in town. We're confident we can. So the benefit is we'll, hopefully have a new fire station, be able to maintain those businesses in town, and potentially do some economic, driven piece down at the old middle school site. So that's where we stand today. We'll certainly be doing one or two more of these shows before we get to Election Day. But again, you can go to the website, which I believe will be on the screen, for more information. And certainly we're available. My office, Representative Turco, Council President Letterie, we're always available to answer questions. Do a coffee hour somewhere, whatever you need us to do, we'll certainly be there. So anything else you want to add, gentlemen, before we wrap up?
I will say that there is a tour this coming Saturday, the 21st, at either Firehouse. No reservation necessarily. Just go by the Firehouse and take a tour. Again, if you go to the winthropfirestation.com website, the videos of tours of the firehouses are up there. You can it's an 11-minute video. It will take you through each fire station. But we do encourage you to get educated. I don't want to tell you how to vote. I know that the need is there, but I just want you to vote with the best educated material you have, and that's what we're really here to do, is just to try to answer every possible question you have. Don't be afraid to ask a question. There is no stupid questions. I also want to thank the representative for coming. Jeff does an incredible amount of work for this town, and he has for many years, and it's greatly appreciated. And to have your support for this project is just phenomenal. You know, I hate to go to any event where I have to speak behind Jeff because he's just an incredibly articulate person, and he's just extremely bright. And to listen to how he explains a project through and looks at it in every facet and doesn't just think off the seat of his pants. He knows, he does the research, and to have his support, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I would just say to my fellow residents, look, I recognize how things are tough right now. I've been at Stop and Shop where seniors from Winthrop have said to me, look at the cost of a dozen eggs, the cost of gas, the cost of home heating oil, or heating your house, or cooling your house during the season. And I recognize all of that, and it's very difficult. My wife and I sit down with that, you know, and we go through our budget and we say, what do we have for free cash? And so $500 a year may seem like a lot of money, but at the end of the day, we're going to build a new fire station at some point. Are we going to build it for $30 or $40 million now, or are we going to build it for $70 or $80 million a couple of years from now? And so, you know, I'd urge you that, I know, you know, Jim and Tony are presenting facts to you, but, you know, as a voter in the town, and not as a state rep, just as a voter and a citizen in the town, I mean, I look forward to voting yes on this question. I urge you to vote yes on this question, because our firefighters deserve it, in light of what they do every day, putting their lives on the line. So thank you for your consideration. And I understand some people are concerned about it. They don't have the answers to their questions, but there are plenty of people that are willing to answer your questions. Reach out, call Jim, call Tony. You know, I always give my number out, 617-539-9979. Call me at my house. I'm happy to answer whatever question you have in this project, because this project is really critically necessary for the future of our town to keep us going. So thank you very much for your opportunity, or the opportunity to say a few words to you. And thanks Jim and Tony for their leadership.
Thank you. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. So thank you, Winthrop. We appreciate the time, appreciate my two guests, and we'll be back with one more show in probably a week or so, but thank you very much. And like you said, reach out if you have any questions. Have a good day.